All right, let's light a match to the pages of history. We're going to ask a powerful question today. What if a single spark of revolution had become a world-changing inferno? We're diving into the spreading flame of the Paris Commune. So let's set the scene. It's 1871. Europe? Well, it's a place of powerful empires, kings, really rigid traditions. But right in the heart of France, you've got Paris. It's war-weary, it's defiant, and it decides to do something completely different. For just a moment, one city tried to build a whole new world, literally from the ground up. But this amazing, honestly audacious experiment, this tiny glimpse into a totally different future, it was snuffed out. It only lasted 72 days. That's it. It all ended in what became known as the Bloody Week, when the whole thing was just brutally crushed by the French army. The dream was over. And that right there, that's the core of what we're talking about today. It's a huge historical what if. What if those 72 days weren't the tragic end of the story? What if they were the explosive beginning? What if the commune had actually survived? So to even try and answer that, we've got to step outside of our own timeline. Let's imagine we're in a completely different 1871. What we're doing here is something historians call exploring a point of divergence. Think of it like this. It's that one single critical moment where history could have split, a fork in the road, right? And each path leads to a totally different reality. For us, that fork in the road is the survival of the Paris Commune. Okay, but before we go down that alternate path, we really need to get a handle on what actually happened. So let's start with the big question. What exactly was the Paris Commune? So in a nutshell, the Commune was this really radical socialist and revolutionary government. They seized control of Paris for just over 2 months. It all kind of rose from the ashes of France's really humiliating defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. Basically, ordinary people in Paris just refused to accept the authority of the new, super conservative national government. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. What they actually tried to do. I mean, this wasn't just some placeholder government. Just look at these policies. We're talking separation of church and state, abolishing child labor, giving employees the right to take over a business if the owner just up and left. They were trying to completely reimagine how a society could work, from the ground up. But, and here's the kicker, all of these incredible, revolutionary ideas, this massive ambition to totally remake society, it was all contained, and then it was crushed. It was all over after just 72 days. A brief, really bloody, and, at least in our timeline, a failed experiment. All right, so we've got the historical background. Now let's get back to our what if. It's time to fan those embers and start imagining a totally different outcome. This is where we get into the idea of the spreading flame. Look, a revolution that's trapped in just one city, it's pretty much destined to fail. For the commune to have any chance of surviving, it absolutely, positively had to expand. So the really logical question is, where would that flame have spread first? So how could this have actually happened? Well, you can imagine it unfolding in, say, 3 stages. First, they just have to survive. The communards would have needed a huge military win against the French army that was just sitting there at Versailles. Okay, so once Paris is secure, that's step 1. Step 2, ignite the rest of France. The news spreads, and maybe it inspires similar uprisings in other big industrial cities like Lyon and Marseille, which, by the way, had their own little communes that failed. And from there, step 3, inspire Europe. A successful, revolutionary France becomes this beacon, right? It could have fueled all these radical movements in Germany, Italy, Spain, places where socialist and anarchist ideas were already bubbling up. Just think about that for a second. A successful revolution in Paris, spreading across France, and then inspiring movements all over the continent. I mean, we're not just talking about an alternate history for one country here. This is potentially a world remade. And the differences would have been just huge. Okay, so in our timeline, right, the late 1800s were all about the rise of these powerful centralized nations and this mad dash for colonial empires. But in this alternate communard timeline, you can imagine a totally different path. The commune was all about local power, not national power. So maybe we'd see a Europe of decentralized federations instead. Its whole ideology was anti-imperialist, so it could have supercharged independence movements all over the world. And with its focus on workers' rights, oh yeah, You'd almost certainly see all these experiments in worker-controlled economies popping up. It would be a profoundly different world. And you have to understand, this wasn't just some political squabble. For people who were there, like the famous revolutionary Louise Michel, this was about a total transformation of everything. Her words just capture it perfectly. The old world must be replaced by a new one. I mean, they were aiming for nothing less than that.
Okay, so after going down this fascinating rabbit hole, it's totally fair to ask, why are we even doing this? Why play these historical what-if games?
And the answer is actually pretty simple. This whole thing isn't about trying to predict the past. That's impossible, right? No, it's a tool for understanding our own world right now. When you see the paths that weren't taken, it gives you a much sharper picture of why our present turned out the way it did. And that's because the ideas that fueled the Paris Commune, they never really disappeared. I mean, think about it. Debates about workers' rights, the push and pull between local and national power, the whole idea of direct democracy, the power of grassroots movements, these are all echoes of the exact same questions Paris was wrestling with more than 150 years ago. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. The Paris Commune itself, the event, was extinguished, brutally. But its ideas, they scattered like embers in the wind. And the real question for us, today, is which of those ideas from this forgotten what-if are still burning? Which ones are still shaping our own struggles and our own dreams for the future?